We continue now at the top of Daf Samach Aleph Amud Aleph and Maseches Gittin. This is Gittin Daf 61a. The Gemara is continuing to discuss the line in the Mishnah which says that if you take an animal out of a trap, that's considered to be stealing on a D'Rabbanan level. And the Mishnah had a machlokas ta'anoim. What level of gezel is it on a D'Rabbanan level? Is it gezel gomor, or is it just regular gezel? And the Gemara says if you're talking about a trap that has a toch, that has an inside, it's like a container, so there kuli alma lo pligi. There's no machlokas. And Rashi says kuli alma lo pligi dekevan deyesh lem toch. Since the trap has an inside, kona lo kelev, so the vessel itself creates the acquisition. V'have gezel gomer. There, everybody would agree that it's gezel gomer. There's no machlokas. Ki pligi belechi v'kukri. They argue by lechi and kukri, and Rashi says lechi chikum aim belaz. That refers to a hook, like a fish hook, and kukri shar mitzudos. That's other kinds of traps, umechsholim and stumbling blocks. Shenosnim chut arich benar. You might put a long rope inside a river, v'chorzen bo machtim al pnei kula, and then you have these needles throughout it that are going to trap the fish. The point is, all of these kind of traps, they're not made as a receptacle, and therefore they don't create a kinyan. And it's in those cases that there's a machlokas tanoim in the Mishnah. What level of gezel is it? And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Metzias chereshota v'chulu, Rabbi Yossi Omer gezel gomer. Again, there was a similar machlokas. Let's say chereshota v'katan finds something, they don't make a real kinyan because they don't have das. So again, the Tanakama said it's considered gezel because of darchei sholem, and Rabbi Yossi said it's considered gezel gomer, it's considered a full gezel. And the Gemara explains, Amar Rav Chisda says, gezel gomer mi divreihem. Rabbi Yossi doesn't mean it's gezel gomer on a doraisa level, he means it's gezel gomer on a d'Rabbanan level. And Rashi says, mi divreihem afilu Rabbi Yossi lav gezel doraisu, meaning even according to Rabbi Yossi, he doesn't mean it's gezel on a doraisa level, he means it's gezel gomer on a d'Rabbanan level. And so the Gemara says, Lamai nafkamina. So what's the difference? If both are agreeing it's gezel midrabanan, what's the difference if it's gezel midrabanan or gezel gomer midrabanan? And to that the Gemara says, Laotziu b'dayanim. The difference is, can judges take it away from the person who took it? Meaning, according to Rabbi Yossi, that it's gezel gomer. So if somebody takes the item and it's considered gezel gomer, the judges are able to take it away from him. And Rashi explains, Laotziu b'dayanim do rabbanan lo nafik b'dayanim. According to the rabbanan, the judges can't take it away once it's stolen. Now, according to Rabbi Yossi, even though it's gezel midrabanan, gezel gomer midrabanan, but it's not gezel at the level where the person is disqualified from being an aid, from being a witness, and there's no transgression of a lav and a doraisa level, according to Rabbi Yossi. But again, it can be taken away by the judges. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Ani hamenakef barosh hazayis ma'ashatachta v'chulu. If you have an ani that's cutting off the olives at the top of the tree, he's not making any kinyan, it's just falling to the bottom of the tree. So again, that's a situation where because of darchei shalom, it's considered to be stealing. And the Gemara says, Tana, it was taught, imliked v'nasan biyad hareza gezel gomer. If when he was cutting it, he held it in his hand, and then he threw it down to the ground, that's already gezel gomer, because he made a real kinyan when he took it in his hand. Rashi says, imliked v'nasan al gabi karka biyad. He put it on the ground with his hand. Holu motel yade gezel gomer, who since it came to his hand, so that's considered gezel gomer. And the Gemara continues, Rav Kahana have a koazel luhutzol. Rav Kahana was going to Hutzol. Chazi alugaver da have a shadi ufye v'konasran tamre. He saw a particular individual. He was taking a stick and hitting the tree, and the dates were coming down. Azul kaman kidvachel. And so then Rav Kahana went and he picked them up and he ate them. He essentially took them from the person because the person had not made a kinyan. So Amar Le, so the person said, Chazi mar devidoy shadesinu. Did the master see that I was doing it with my hand? I really did make a kinyan. I had these items in my hand. Amar Le, so he said back to him, May Asrei Rabbi Yoshia, you're coming from the area of Rabbi Yoshia, that's why you're so learned, that's why you know the halacha. Kari Olev, Tzaddik Yisod Olam, and he called about that individual, that the Tzaddik is the foundation of the world. Rashi says Rabbi Yoshia min Hutzal Haver. Rabbi Yoshia was also from Hutzal, and again this took place in Hutzal. May Asrid Rabbi Yoshia, you're coming from the area of Rabbi Yoshia. Lafika Chata Baki Bidin, and that's why you know the halacha Lafishu Dorish Larabim Umodian, because Rabbi Yoshia would make drushes in public. He would let people know the halacha, and that's why this individual knew the halacha. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Ein memachin biyad aniyei nochrim beleket b'shichu v'peya b'mnei darchei shalom. If non-Jews collect leket shich and peya, we don't protest. That's also a way of promoting the peace. And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, mefarnesim aniyei nochrim im aniyei Yisrael. We support the poor from the non-Jews just like the Jewish poor. Umevakran cholei nochrim im cholei Yisrael. We visit the non-Jewish sick just like we visit the Jewish sick. V'kovrin meisei nachrim and meisei Yisrael, and we bury the non-Jewish dead just like we bury the Jewish dead. Memnei darchei shalom. All of that is in order to promote the peace. And Rashi says in Meisei Yisrael, with those who die who are Jewish, lo bekivrei Yisrael. It's not that we're burying them in a Jewish cemetery. Ela misaskin b'hem. It just means we deal with the situation. In Matzam Harugim in Yisrael, if we find that non-Jews are killed together with Jews, we're going to take care of all of their burials. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Mashelas isha lechaverta hachashuda al shvius. A woman can lend to her friend, even though the friend is suspect on violating shvius, nafe, ukvara, a winnow, or a sieve, v'rechayim, or a mill, v'tano, or an oven, avalo savr v'lo titchanima, but she can't select, or she can't grind together with her. That's already considered to be assisting someone who transgresses. Eishes chaver, if you have the wife of a chaver, that's somebody who's generally careful when it comes to things like meiser. Mashelas le'eshes amoretz, she's allowed to lend out to the wife of an amoretz. Nafu kvar, again a winnow or a sieve, uvoreres v'tochenes umrakedes ima. She's even allowed to select and grind and sift with her. Aval mishatatel asamayim, but once the water is put in the dough, lo siga ima, then she's not allowed to touch together with her. She can't work with her. Lefisha in machzikin yedei over avera, because again the principle is you're not allowed to support somebody who transgresses averis. And all of these halachas are because of darchei shalom in order to promote the peace. And during the Shemitah year you can assist the non-Jews in working the field, but you can't assist the Jews. And you're allowed to ask the non-Jews how they're doing. You're allowed to greet them. That also is in order to promote the peace. And Rashi says, ala shvius, again, we're talking about a woman who's suspect on shvius, lishmor peira shvius u'latzliya min habir ve'elach, meaning from the time of biur, that's the time that you have to destroy the peira shvius. She doesn't do that. She doesn't get rid of them. She doesn't make them ownerless. Instead, she keeps them in her house, and she keeps them for herself, so she's suspect in violating shvius. Lo taver v'lo titchonima, so it says you're allowed to lend her the kalim, but you're not allowed to actually do the work with her. L'saya, you can't assist her. You can't support someone in an avera while they're doing the avera. And now it said in the Eshes Chaver case, it said she's even allowed to work together with her. Uvoreres v'tochenes, she can select and she can grind with her. But Gemara Parach, now the Gemara will ask on that, Amai, why should that be allowed? Harei chashud ala meiser, isn't it the same problem? This is a woman who is an Eshes Amar, she's suspect when it comes to meiser. Why does the Mishnah say that you're allowed to work together with her? Bisman shehi tameya lo garsinon, the text of Bisman shehi tameya we don't have in the Mishnah. Ubebraisa garsinon la beGemara. That text is actually in the Braisa in the Gemara. Aval mishetatil es hamayim lo siga. But then it said once the water goes in the dough, then you're not allowed to work together with her. Lefisha mishagilgalo hutval al chala. Because at that point in time, says Rashi, once you already roll the dough, once you already add in the water, now it's already tevel in terms of having to remove a section for chala. It's essentially considered tevel, and you need to take off chala. The kamatama machmas kelim tameim, and now you're going to make it tame because there's tame kelim. V'zum mesayata legalgal, and now you're going to help her do that. That's a problem. V'asr ligrom tumah lachala. It's asr to cause chala to become tame. So that's what it means in that line. Once the water touches the dough, you have this problem of being metame chala. V'kulam lo amru, in all of these cases, sheitiru lashilam kelim or l'sayim shalo b'shas avera atzma elam ne darchei shalom. All of these things that are allowed, whether it's lending them kelim, whether it's helping them not at the exact time of the avera, that's all allowed because of darchei shalom to promote the peace. Umachzikin yedei nachrim hashta mashma mesayin mamish. Right now, it sounds like you can actually help them. You can directly assist them if they're working during the Shemitah year. V'shoal and v'shlomam, and you're allowed to greet them. Kol hayamim, that means anytime. V'afa b'shematel ala nachri shem shamayim. Now, even though when you greet someone, you're using the name of heaven. Sha'ashalom shmo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because the word shalom is one of the names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nevertheless, it's allowed because of darchei shalom. And the Gemara says, Ma'ishna reishu, ma'ishna seifa. What's the difference between the first case of the Mishnah and the second case of the Mishnah? And Rashi says, Ma'ishna reishu de katani lo savr shemesayis yedei ovre avera shvius. It says in the beginning of the Mishnah that you're not allowed to select with her, you can't actively do the work with her, because you're helping her transgress, because she doesn't keep the halachas of shvius, of the Shemitah year. U'ma'ishna seifa, and what's the difference in the seifa at the end of the Mishnah? De katani uvoreres v'tochenes. It says there you are allowed to select with her, you can grind with her. V'halo mesayis yedei ovre avera tevel, but aren't you helping her out in a situation of tevel? This is somebody that is suspect that she doesn't take off the proper meiser. And the Gemara offers two answers to this question. Amar Abaya says, Rov Ame Ha'aretz Ma'asrin Hein, that the truth is, we're talking here about an Eishes Ha'aretz, the wife of an Amoretz, but the majority of Ame Ha'aretz, they do take off meiser. There isn't a real concern over here that she's one of the Ovrei Avera. Rashi says, Rov Ame Ha'aretz Ma'asrin Hein Hilka Chashasha de Rabbanan V'Yalmu. This is just a concern of the Rabbanan. Umimnei Darchei Shalom Mutter L'Sayin, because of Darchei Shalom, you're allowed to help them. Avol Chashuda Al Shvius Mashma de Muchzak Lonba Shechashuda. But in the first case of the Mishnah, we have a real suspicion that she transgressed transgresses the laws of Shemitah. That's why we're more strict in the Reisha of the Mishnah. That's Abaya's approach. And the Gemara continues, Rava Amar, Rava says an entirely different answer to the Mishnah. Hacha ba'ma'aretz de Rabbi Meir v'tumah v'tahara de Rabbanan. Here in the Mishnah, meaning in the Seif of the Mishnah, we're talking about the Ama'aretz as defined by Rabbi Meir, and we're only talking about a situation where there's a suspicion of issues in terms of tumah and tahara at a de Rabbanan level. Since it's only a de Rabbanan level, that's why we are more lenient. The Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa, Ezu Ama'aretz, what's considered an Ama'aretz? How do you define an Ama'aretz? Kol she'eno ochel chulav v'tahara, divrei Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says it's somebody who doesn't eat chulin b'tahara. Again, on a doraisa level, you don't need to eat chulin b'tahara. You only have to have trum and kachim b'tahara. So here you have this derabanan concern. You have an individual who's an Ama'aretz, as defined by Rabbi Meir. They don't take care of tum and tahara when it comes to chulin. The Chachamim say kol she'eno ma'aser peirosov. What's considered an Ama'aretz? Somebody who doesn't take off meiser, and that's as we explained in Ama'aretz when we first learned the Mishnah. And Rashi says, Rava Amar, Rava says, Liolam kemechza al mechza misafkinan luhu. Really, when it comes to Amei Aretz, there really is an actual concern, not like Abaya, who says Rov Amei Aretz. There is an actual concern that an Am Aretz doesn't take off meiser. V'yasser l'sayin, and it would be yasser to help them out in such a situation, hoel v'avera doraisi, because not taking off meiser, that's an avera doraisa. However, our Mishnah, according to Rava, happens to be talking about an individual where there's a chazaka. We know that she takes off the meiser. V'yama'aretz Rabbi Meir, who, and the Yama'aretz that's being discussed in the Mishnah is not a concern of meiser. It's a concern of Rabbi Meir that she doesn't take care of tumah issues. Shechashed lechol peiros betumah. That she's suspect, or he's suspect, meaning her husband is suspect of eating the peiros betumah. V'hach tumah v'tara dechulan derabanan. And this is just an issue of tumah miderabanan. The Torah lo izira lechol betara, because the Torah doesn't say we have to eat everything in purity. El truma v'kachim bilvad, that halacha on a doraisa level only applies to truma and kachim. Hilkach la'avi surah doraisa, therefore it's not an issue that's a doraisa iser. Umimnei darchei shalom mutter l'sayim. That's why it says because of darchei shalom you're allowed to assist. Again, that's why in the Seif of the Mishnah it says the Eshes Chavir is allowed to sift together with her, to do the work together with her, because it's only a derabanan concern. But the Gemara continues, if that's the case, that this is a derabanan concern of tumah, but from the fact that the end of the Mishnah goes on to talk about where the water touches the dough, so then she's not allowed to work together with her, that seems to be a tumah issue. It says, it says once the water touches the dough, so you can't work together with her, because now she's helping her out in terms of tumah, she's helping her do an avera. But Michlal, doesn't that imply the Reisha La'av betumah v'tahara askinan, that the first line is not talking about tumah and tahara, meaning if you're saying that once the water touches the dough, touches the flour, so then you have a problem of tumah and tahara, so it sounds like in the first part of the Mishnah where the Eshes Chavir is working with the Eshes Ama'aretz, it was not an issue of tumah and tahara. And the Gemara answers not necessarily. Reisha v'seifa b'tumah v'tahara. It could be that the first line and the second line over there, they're all talking about tumah and tahara. However, v'reisha b'tumah schulin. By the reisha, we're talking about tumah of chulin, which, as we said, is just a rabban, and that's why we're more lenient. V'seifa b'tumah schala. And the seifa is talking about tumah schala, as Rashi explained on the Mishnah. And tumah schala is a doraisa issue, that's why we're more strict. And Rashi explains, "V'aminiktani seifa svir lelahai deparich." The questioner in the Gemara thinks that the reason why when the water touches the flour is a problem, because now it's prepared to be mekabel tumah, so it sounds like a tumah issue. That sounds like the reisha is not talking about tumah and tara. There is no issue of tumah in the reisha, because the water hasn't even touched it. It can't even be mekabel tumah. Now, if the Mishnah is talking about a situation where the Eshes Ama'aretz is trusted by Meiser, as Rava says, so why does it say it's because of promoting the peace? There should be no problem here whatsoever. There's no problem of tumah and tara because it's not mukhshal l'kabel tumah, and there should be no problem of meisers because again you're talking about somebody where there's a chazaka where they did take off meiser, and the Gemara ended up answering reisha v'seifa b'tumah v'tahara or v'peiros mukhshar, and the reisha and the seifa everything is prepared to be mekabel tumah. The reisha calls man shelo gilgala. What we're talking about in the reisha is that you haven't started kneading the dough. Ein el tumas chulin derabanan, so it's only tumas chulin which is derabanan, as we explained. V'lo gazer b'mishum esayeya b'makom darchei shalom, so we don't make a gezerah that you're helping someone who's doing an avera in order to promote the peace. Uvilvad shelo tochel, as long as she doesn't eat it. V'seiva b'tumas chala doraisa, and the seifa is talking about tumas chala. That's already doraisa. Once you're already kneading the dough, it's chayiv and chala, and therefore you have a tumah on a doraisa level. She'asur l'tama b'yad, you're not allowed to make chala tameh. Techsiv es mishmeres trumosai avid lashim, or you have to protect the chala. And the Gemara continues, Uriminu, but don't we have the following contradiction? And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Samech Aleph Amud Beis.